Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Boys and girls, I say to you without a shred of hyperbole that we are in a war for the soul of the West. And as children of the West, we find ourselves, therefore, in a war for our own souls. Now, we tend to think of this in big, lofty fashion. It doesn't always come down from satanic cabals of the entertainment industry or global governance run by satanic pedophiles or George Soros or the World Economic Forum. But I repeat myself. What it counts on is incrementalism. Happens at the small level. And the key to fighting it is having the courage to step up on day one so we don't get to the end results of day two. Now, this goes against our deep nature because we don't want, as civilized individuals, that confrontation. We don't want to be the bad guy. Particularly when we have a media establishment that always portrays us as the ones looking for the fight. So they do it incrementally. And we've gotten to see that in spades over the course of the last 3 years. How many of my Houston people remember this little demon? Yeah, Lena Hidalgo, Harris County judge, in charge of the COVID response, completely botched everything. But more to the point, look at the principle that is illustrated here in this meme. If you break the COVID-19 curfew mask order, I will arrest you and fine you $1,000, which was policy, by the way. But if you're already in jail for rape or robbery, you're free to go. That one facet of the entire COVID debacle was the one that set me off from the very beginning. Do you know that in my home state of Washington, the I-5 killer came within 2 council votes of being set free in concern for his health, safety, and well-being in the early days of the COVID epidemic? Yeah, that happened. And it wasn't that long ago. We always forget, though, step one, and when we try to call it out, what are we always told? Come on, guys, you know the words. Slippery slope fallacy. Slippery slope fallacy is not a fallacy when it's got precedent. And after the last 3 years, I will never hear that phrase uttered in my presence again. Because what followed were the fentanyl Floyd riots that the propaganda ministry assured, in spite of visuals just like this on our television screens every single night, were mostly peaceful protests. Oh yeah, boys and girls, they sold that to us with a straight face, and a disturbing number of grazers and Pollyannas believed it. And even recently, it leads up until now. This was the scene at the Tennessee State Capitol after a transgender mass murder took place. Now, it would have been bad enough they could have ignored that vital detail. But correct me if I'm wrong, when this happened at a larger Capitol building a few states away, didn't they call that an insurrection? Yeah. Peaceful protests, peaceful demonstrations. It's only an insurrection. It's only a riot when the other guys do it. And why wouldn't we do it? All the things that are falling apart. Again, these riots are mere symptoms of the disease. Crime rate is completely out of control. The cadaver in the Oval Office running this regime has let the border situation get to a point that's beyond crisis and will not even acknowledge it with the word crisis, as his chief of Home Security refused to use the word crisis in his testimony before the Senate. And we're told, much like in 1984, to ignore the evidence of our own eyes. No siree, Bob. This thing is completely under control. In spite of the jump up in crime rates and murders, in spite of the raped and beaten bodies found out there in the desert, wouldn't have been enough. This just happened in Cleveland, Texas. This guy right here, previously deported, illegal, shot and killed 5 people, including an 8-year-old child, boys and girls. That's right. Border's completely under control. But you know, if the deaths of 5 random people don't get to you, let's examine this one found along the Arizona border. An 8-year-old child found at a border with traces of the DNA 67 different men. Those are the ones that they tested and traced. It could have been more. Little girls getting raped by 67 different men. And we're assured that the border's out of control. We're assured that those evil Republicans are even in a war against women, right? We're assured that they're in a war against women. But it was Democrats that voted 203 to no, totally along party lines, to allow biological men to play in women's sports. Now, the gender thing is completely out of control, more similar to that war for the soul, because it's all coming down through the children. I mean, assuming our children live to see tomorrow with the other things that this cadaverous regime has in order for us. Gender affirming care. Let's say that one again and make it feel good. Feel good about ourselves. We're talking about cutting the cocks off of 13-year-old boys, slicing the tits off of 14-year-old girls, all without parental consent. Why? Why? We're certainly making too much of it. We made enough of it that they had to close down the Tavistock Center in London, England. But it wasn't enough. Here in the United States, we have dozens, plural, of those clinics offering gender affirming care, and many in states where the parents don't even have to be notified. And you're going to tell us that we're making too much out of it? How about when the United Nations says that minors can consent to sex? Now, this article, by the way, got fact checked, and we're going to get into that fact check a little bit later on in the program just to see the absurdity of the propaganda. But again, these Jesus freaks have to be making too much out of it. These Christians are just completely out of control. They have a persecution complex, really. Merrick Garland Justice Department, just in the course of this last year, DOJ, FBI, looking for informants to infiltrate Catholic churches that still deliver the Latin Mass, as if they were somehow a threat to domestic security, as if they, for the sake of sticking to Western traditions and delivering the Catholic Mass in Latin, were existential threats to Western civilization. I mean, I can think of some religions with traditions that might be an existential threat to Western civilization, but those guys are given a pass because we're focused on Catholics. And if that wasn't enough for you, a SWAT team, FBI SWAT team in full battle rattle, showed up at the home of Mark Houck, a pro-life demonstrator who had been previously acquitted on a state charge of a misdemeanor for a dust-up that happened in front of an abortion clinic. But that wasn't enough for Merrick Garland. No, Merrick Garland dispatched the FBI and a DOJ SWAT team, 20 men in full battle rattle, with AR-15s that under any other circumstances, Garland and DOJ would have found morally reprehensible, to take down a man in front of his family, unarmed, all for the sin of thought crime. You know, we're 30 years past a very dark day in American history. When they start making noises about the existential threats presented by right-wing religious extremists, as a child of Texas, I tend to take them very fucking seriously. 30 years, 82 murdered, 28 of them kids. No one's apologized. No one's been held accountable. And I meant what I said in the meme. When they are telling you how they see you and what they think of you, believe them. So how, in this day and time, do we find the light in the darkness that I'm always speaking about? Sometimes it finds itself elusive, but you know what? I think it's time, for me at least, can't speak for the rest of you, take a step back, have a look around and see where to find that light in the darkness. What I see around me would drive me insane if I did not know that no matter what happens, God will have the last word. St. Pius the Athonite, the Russian Orthodox tradition. Now, I don't pretend to be devout Russian Orthodox, but if you can't see the power in that sentiment, I think I would do some deep soul searching, not in the sense of searching through your soul, but to find out if you still have one. It has been said that childhood was thinking that Vlad was the villain, and adulthood is realizing that he was the hero. Now, I used to scoff at that prospect, but the more I think about it, the atrocities that Vlad was willing to commit to send a message to his enemies that he was willing to do anything in defense of his faith and his people, there's a lot to be said for that. The only faith that the state, the secular arm of the state has, is a faith in the state and a faith in equality. What we have learned from history is that equality is built on mass graves. No matter what, that is the inevitable outcome of the worship of state. Ordinarily, it'd be an Orwell quote here, but since we open with Ephesians, I think we're going to stick with that theme. 5:11. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. And along the principles of the people that carried that banner through the Holy Land so many years ago, peace if possible, truth at all costs. And if we don't have the strength to pursue truth, no matter where it takes us, we don't deserve peace. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors. And I cannot stress this enough now that I have one, certainly not employers. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They have been guaranteed to choke and impale you on a swinging, throbbing slab of turgid, thorny truth cock. Spread it open wide, boys and girls. This one's going to hurt. We're going in dry. Welcome back. It's time once again for the Sunday sermon. Hopefully no technical difficulties so far, man. I'm going to take a little roll call here. We're going to have a look around, see who all is on board early. First of all, everybody in for the drum roll. Coming hard, charging out of the starting gate as we always do. A little shot of music from the one and only Red Desert. Gut-stomping rock and roll band from the once great city and now smoldering embers and ruins of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. We're going to see how this one turns out. I appreciate you guys being here, man, because this was going to be important. On a personal level for me, and hopefully it will reflect on you, have the same kind of gravity, have the same kind of movement, but at the very least, if it'll light a little bit of spark, I can live with that, man. Do a little roll call. We got Roman on board. Roman, the irony of today is going to slay you, brother. That long and arduous history that we have, you're going to get a lot more out of this than most, no matter what conclusions you come to. The original Sinner Sister herself, Miss Emmy, good to see you on board. Brother Dennis, OG Rappers Ranger and Prophet of Doom, good to see you. Who else we got on board? Oh, yes, Mr. Bill Wade. You honor me with your presence, sir. You honor me with your presence. Glad you made it out. I hope it lives up to expectations. Ariella, my little birthday sister, have not seen you in a while. Nice to have you on board. And don't worry about it, baby. You make it out when you can make it out. It's all right, man. Brother Joel Allen Jackson, hello, hello. We got most of the usual suspects. I think we're probably going to have some that are going to be in a little bit late because again, normally I roll at 1830, rolling at 1800. Maybe some people didn't get the message. That's totally all right. I'm good for that. Oh yes, indeed, brother Bone. You figure heavily in this one, my brother, and I'm glad that you're here. Speaking of people that I'm glad that you're here, my beloved Oksana, my goodness, girl. Sergey loves you too because Russia. I miss you, mama. I miss you, and I'm really glad you're here for this because it's going to be important. Ladies and gentlemen, brother Sonny Buzikis. Am I late? How am I late, man? Maybe my clock's off, man. I thought it was starting right on time. I don't have the punctuality of some people, you know. But anyway, brother, I do deeply appreciate you. Thank you for everything, for being a part of this, and for showing up for this as well. Sister Nancy Nixon, remember, not L and G's agree with this alphabet mafia agenda. Sister Nancy, I could not agree more, and I'm agonizingly well aware of that fact. Agonizingly well aware of that fact. This ain't about lumping everybody into the same anything. That is the exclusive province of the left. Where go one, guys are all the no, man, no. It's not like that at all. Not like that at all. I promise you. A little bit more light here. It I'm not taking it like that, and I don't think any of the people that are on board for the sermon take it like that either. We have the skill of being able to distinguish and to be able to think rationally and critically, which is something that is sadly lacking from the opposing side. My wife Charlie, has entered the chat. I'm glad you made it, baby. Thank you for that. Hang out as long as you can. If you got stuff, I get it. But it would be really excellent if you could hang out. Mr. Wright, good to see you, brother. Let's see who else, man. I think we got all the usual stuff. Oh, look at this. Brand new edition, man. My new, my new brother in arms, man. I'm glad you made it. Glad you made it. And I hope you get a lot out of this, man. I hope that you will bear witness to my bearing witness, because you were a part of this too, man. We have the distinction of 10 people there that will have a moment that only the 10 of us share. And I'm going to do my best to properly articulate it. And I think that even the wordsmith that I am, I'm going to find myself falling short, but I'm going to give it a hell of an effort. George, good to see you. Who else we got? Oh, look at this. Vince made it. Glad, brother. I'm glad. I'm glad you got the memo. Brother Jude. Brother, what I would have given for you to be able to be there, not just for the moment, but for the class. It was something, brother. It was something. And it's man, those of us who were there, it's going to be with us for the rest of our lives. Particularly what happened on Sunday. We're going to get into all that, man. There's going to be definition of terms and stuff. For some of the folks that are just getting here, who who haven't been here before, man, we're gonna be leaning the sermon a little bit towards them. We can't just assume that we can drop them into grease and make sure that they're just going to catch up on the fly. I think most of them would. Anyway, guys, once again, the bumper music, Red Desert, Older, No Wiser. We're going to go ahead and fade that out. Get a couple of sponsor shout outs out of the way. That we're gonna jump right into the meat of this thing, man. There's so much going on, and as I said in the opener, that's the thing. Because I always say there's no black pills here. We don't give in to that negativity. We've got to be that light in the darkness. We've got to be that strength in a world full of weakness, that signal that punches through the noise. And sometimes it's difficult to find that clarity on our own, man. Sometimes, um, sometimes there are things outside of us that are just too. You know what? I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for the end because I really want to bring this home. We get the sponsor shout outs out of the way. First of all, old and dear friend of mine, Roman, and his lovely wife, Carrie, and Roxy and Allie, and a bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. They are erotic pinups and portraits people. He's doing some beautiful watercolor work of some beautiful naked women, and testosterone driven commentary. So you've got creativity, you have beautiful naked, and you have testosterone driven commentary on Planet Bart. We call that a trifecta. Go check him out on opiumtales.com. He is back on Twitter. Roman, I cannot wait for the day that Roman, I can't have bone. I'm glad you're here, bro. Roman, I cannot wait for the day that we finally get to out you for your technical expertise and your origin story, because the irony is going to rack everybody. But as far as irony, I think you are going to get a lot more out of today's sermon than anybody else, knowing the long and arduous course of my life, the arc of my life and my spirituality and my understanding and my worldview. Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends. We go all the way back to 1988, which is actually before some of the people that are watching the sermon were even born. So we got some history, and it'll be interesting. Also, want to give shout outs to Casey and Dusty Tellison, my Viking brothers over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Period. End of statement. Done. Full effing stop. That's it. If you guys that have lived in the Northwest, you know that in most places, their idea of barbecue is like meat with some sauce on it. Hey, man, A for effort, but you don't understand rubs. You don't understand smoke. The guys at Nordic Smoke, they get it. And it is like, man, I am like Carolina by way of Texas, and I've never tasted anything like this before. I know Sonny is on board, and he can attest to the product as well. Bark tested, Spetsnaz approved, Nordic Smoke Barbecue. Check them out on all the social media platforms. And Dusty has been doing some little comedy one offs to promote the product. And they've got some things in the works that I'm looking forward to announcing for you. So it's going to be interesting watching their evolution as well. So thanks to Casey and Dusty Tellison. And Casey just got honored with yet another book award. Casey, for the record, you guys that have been around already know this. Some of you guys that aren't, that haven't been around, don't. Casey is he's a combat vet. He's a Marine. He's a machine gunner, and he has a memoir called "Freaks of a Feather." You can find it on Amazon. It's published by Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington. Again, I'm not telling tales out of school. This memoir started off as a suicide note. It will take you to some dark places. I know a lot of you guys out there have been around. I know some of you have trigger time in some dark places. That won't be anything, but for the guys that don't, this will take you on a walk not only on his inner landscape, but in a lot of places that civilized human beings would rather not go. But he is an exceedingly skilled and gifted writer. He just picked up another award this week, and it's getting so hard to keep track of him. He got to meet General Mattis, who is also a denizen of the Northwest and also clearly, as we all know, a Marine. It's a phenomenal book, man. And if you can, check it out. Again, it's available on Amazon. The name of the book is Freaks of a Feather, Casey Tellison. Check it out. And that'll be that. All right, guys. First things first, what do we got on? What do we got on? Oh, hey, Ray, man. I'm glad you made it out. Glad you made it out. I keep popping over here. This is very simple, man. There's not much to it. It's like me and a webcam and a laptop. This big military grade tank of a laptop. Uh, and that's it, man. I've got a little JBL Flip 4 speaker that was acquired from one Ryan Jenkins on board. What do we got? I'm late. Hey, cool, brother, cool. Hey, look, no harm, no foul. You know, you're late. We're all doing it. What? They just made a funny smile to your reference about Peace One after 1988. Well, of course she did. 0331 guns up, right? Little nod to Casey. I see you out there, Brett. What do we got? I'm still hating on my kids for them eating the ribs Dusty gave me. Hey, look, this is okay, Sonny. I got it. In the interest of full disclosure, now, Charlie and I did have the back, thankfully, because I think there might have been violence behind that. What he's referring to is a couple of years ago, we were up here, and uh, he and Megan were in town for a libertarian convention of some sort. There are a lot of really high profile speakers there, and they were staying with me in Spokane. And Dusty brought by some ribs, and we were in transition. We are packing up the car because we are going across to Montana. We were doing some training right on the edge of Yellowstone Park the next day, and we're in the process of loading up the car. And Sonny he kind of ducks by on the way in and like grabs a rib. Oh, hey, cool, thank you. And then he comes back out. He's just got this look on his face, like, where did this come from? And he was completely blown away by the ribs, and he would not have thought that the Northwest would be the place to go to find barbecue. So he's got this big tub of ribs that Dusty had sent with him, and Sophia and Nicholas got into them while we were out on the range, and we're sending rounds down range and everything. And Sophia and Nicholas got into the tub that was his, and it just cleaned them out. And all of a sudden, I hear this tapestry of obscenities in that characteristic, one of a kind, sunny accent. I can't even duplicate it right now because I think it's just going to make him mad. It's going to take him back to that moment. But this tapestry of obscenities in sunny accent. They ate my damn ribs. And Charlie, of course, to the rescue because we had an extra tub. And we're just like, Sonny, wait. She comes running up with this thing of ribs, thus probably saving a violent incident and certainly a memorable story. but, but yeah, Bart tested, Spetsnaz approved, Nordic smoked barbecue. And Sonny, I think you're going to like what they have in the works. All right. They've already got their sauces are now out and available for shipping. The rubs are now out and available for shipping if you want to smoke your own down in Texas. But they are working on something that will hopefully get Nordic smoked barbecue into the face of some Texans. And I will just go ahead and establish the Bart Bunker as the Republic of Texas embassy in the Great Cascadian Secession, and we will establish diplomatic relations, and life will be good. Yes, Roman, thank you for that. Remember to smash that like button. It helps the algorithm big time. Algorithm, that is my college word. I've got like three of those. Okay, so first segment, you guys already know where we are going. The first segment that we always do. And I went and I got the sound effect back, boys and girls. First segment that we're doing, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Check it out. Hey, yes, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. That's right. I finally got the effect back for the soundboard here again. Literally, man, I have the bullet points, which is like my open windows and things like that, which is just the bullet points that I want to hit during the thing. But beyond that, I've got iTunes, and that's it. It's the extent of my high production value here. Ryan's Rabbit Hole is it's an essential segment. We do it every week. One of the things that Ryan and I bonded over early is that we are both repositories of useless information. We are murder to play a game of Trivial Pursuit against because we know a little something about damn near everything. So every week Ryan sends us down the rabbit hole, take us out of our comfort zone, take us just a little poke into the bread oven, kind of take us out of the tunnel. Some days it coincides with the subject matter that we're going to be discussing. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's always interesting. Take you a little bit out of your comfort zone. Sometimes we go historical. Sometimes we go esoteric. And that's when he really makes me work for it because damn, man, his first call for this week's rabbit hole was some nine-dimensional metaphysic quantum. Dude, I can't. I can't. Um, he really makes me work for it, man. Ryan is quite the astute observer of the esoteric. Again, there's the rest of my college words. I used them all up at once. But anyway, this week we are going historical. Now, you guys know that whenever and you've heard me lament this, well, not really lament it, but laud and lament it on the sermon before, that no person is defined by any one facet of who they are. The left would like to tell you that a lot of the founding fathers were 100% evil, that they did no good, accomplished no good in the world because they were slave owners. And the left seeks to define people by just one facet of their existence. And what I always like to bring up is that heroic men have heroic flaws, that without exception, these men are greater than that one particular facet of their personality. And with that in mind, a rabbit hole is going to focus on an early colonist here in the United States, a man by the name of Anthony Johnson. Now, Anthony Johnson was a slave owner. He was a slave owner. And in fact, according to historical records in Virginia, you can find no one for him who was a legal slave owner because slavery as an institution wasn't established until the early 1600s. And so Anthony Johnson was brought to the United States, as so many Americans were back then, as an indentured servant. People always like to draw the distinction between slavery and indentured servitude. I submit to you that it's worse to be an indentured servant because you are going to beat up a rental car in a way that you are never going to do to a car that you're eventually going to own. Makes sense? Especially when you're pulling people out of Europe, right? Because even without, hemorrhagic fevers and everything else, how long is a white guy from London going to last on a sugar plantation in Barbados? So tell me again how indentured servitude wasn't as bad as slavery. In any case, Anthony Johnson was brought to this country as an indentured servant. He was a slave owner. He was the first slave owner in the Virginia Republic. Now, He was sold. I'm looking up the name. The plantation owner's name was Bennett, and he was a tobacco farmer. And he worked. There are accounts differ whether his indentured servitude was 4 years or 7 years. Customary was 7 years, but the records are a little iffy, and it looks like he may have gotten out in four. But beyond that, he was he went through a lot, not just as, but while he was an indentured servant, the plantation was raided by the Powhatan Indians, right? There were 57 people on that plantation. The Powhatan Indians killed 52 of them. Anthony Johnson survived and went on to prosper. He served out his indentured servitude. He acquired his own plantation and his own indentured servants and slaves. He became the first legal slave owner in the United States. Now, when you're looking at the big picture that we're trying to get across here, you think to yourself, now the left would tell you that Anthony Johnson is irredeemable because he was a slave owner, and they would ignore the story of the rest of his life, and they would ignore that he survived the attack from the Powhatan Indians, because after all, First Nation peoples and the indigenous, righteous indigenous savages rising up against the colonizers, yada yada yada, they would ignore all of that for the sake that he was a slave owner. Here's the one kicker that not one of you have taken into account who weren't already familiar with the case. Anthony Johnson was black. That's right, boys and girls. This heroic man with his heroic flaws, the first legal slave owner in the 13 colonies. I say the United States. We weren't the United States at that time. The first slave owner in the European colonies of the New World, the very first legal slave owner in the territory of Virginia, Anthony Johnson, was a black man. Ponder this for a second. A black man who came over as an indentured servant, served out the term of his indentured servitude, and rather than being broken by that or continuing to work the plantation, decided, you know what, I'm going to pull all of my resources. I'm going to stay with my nose to the grindstone. I'm going to elevate myself above my station, as I am able to do in land that respects the sovereignty of the individual and the freedom of a man. I'm going to elevate myself above my station. And he became a plantation owner. And he owned slaves, and he owned indentured servants. All historical records are that he treated them exceedingly well. No reports of abuse. But if you look at the enormity of this man's life, how could you possibly, in light of all of the things that made that man who he was, see nothing but an irredeemable slave owner? The left would assure you that that is the case, would they not? The left would assure you that that is the case. The left doesn't ever look at the big picture. The left, when confronted with the fact, after you told them that story, that the first legal slave owner in the United States colonies was a black man, would stutter, stammer, call you some horrible shit, and then walk off. Think critically, people. Remember, no man is so pure that he is without sin. But no man is so reviled that he is beyond redemption. I know I see a couple of you out there, right? Oh, yeah, but what do we? No, hear me out. No man is so far down who is still drawing breath. There's a distinction. No man who is still drawing breath is so irredeemable, is so far gone that he is beyond redemption. Just like no man on this level approaches the angelic without having some dark ass skeletons in his closet. No man is defined by any one single facet of who he is. but you have to be able to think critically before you can take these things into account. Anyway, Anthony Johnson, that is Ryan's rabbit hole for this week. You guys do your own thing with it. Anthony Johnson, spelled exactly as you would expect it to be. He lived to the age of 70, which is pretty heavy considering the time frame. And again, there's some interesting news stories and tidbits and lawsuits and things like that that took place. But the core of it is think critically. Don't let anyone's narrative define someone by a single facet of who they were. And that is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. Ryan, I appreciate that. And Ryan, I also appreciate you indulging me, not having to go the route with the quantum thing, because I could not have done it justice. I couldn't have. And I've already, and seeing as how I've already got one thing on deck that I've got to go into this week that is going to require some effort to truly do justice to, I couldn't have done that with the quantum. So thank you for indulging me. And maybe a week or two from now, we can actually delve into that. When I can shake it off. What do we got? Oh, of course, Ryan's going to show up right now. Yes. Okay, guys, everybody right now. Everybody right now. Okay, guys, you know my intellect. All right, I'm not a dumbass by any stretch of the imagination. You know my communication skills and how gifted I am at articulating a concept or an idea. Right now, I'm saying all this to you, but right now, I want everybody to look down. Everybody look down right there, and I want you to read that. I just want you to read that. Right. The net-close triadic dimensional vortical paradigm was a no-go, huh? This is Ryan loves me. Ryan truly loves me. And I know that he loves me because he makes me fucking work for it. Okay? So there is that. You sick. So yeah, that was going to be the rabbit hole, and I begged them. I was just like, look, man, I got to exercise veto power here. Please don't put me to this, because I already knew the heaviness of the other subject matter that I was going to get into, and I was not in the zone to do this as the opener. So thank you for giving me Anthony Johnson, and we'll just run with it. Like, I love you, Ryan. Know that in your heart, son. Freaking love you, man. What is that? David, first of all, hi. Glad you made it. Joey, the left is unconcerned with actions when it bumps up against DEI and ESG. That is also correct. Joey, by the way, the Sultan of Sarcasm. Everybody who hasn't been here before. And of course, brother David, also from Texas. The left is more prejudiced than any I own. They push the divide every day. Yes, they do. And we will be getting into that. What do we got? So Ryan, started moving a crane to oil the far. Oh, okay, cool. Bounce me the deets on that crane, man. I'd like to know what you're moving out there. They just got me. They got me out of the smelter project. I bumped down from the 90 ton to a 40 ton. Just flying some pipe the other day. It was funsies, but beautiful skyline. It's gorgeous, man. It's gorgeous. William Adair. What? Look at that. Hey, man, been a long time. Hope you were rocking. Hey, thanks, William. I appreciate it, man. And I hope life is 170 ton demon. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Right on. William, I'm glad you made it out, man. It has been a long time. I see you from time to time, and I'm glad you showed up this week because you know me from middle school, high school. You know me from my upbringing and from who I was and from where my strength was anchored. So I think you're going to find the end of the program. I think you're going to find the end of the program interesting if you can hang out that long. If not, try to catch the replay. Also, Holly, if you are here and I missed you, or if you were watching the replay, I hope that you enjoy the program as well. By the way, Sunny, Holly wishes to get in touch with you. She wants us both on the program again at some point. Holly, by the way, definitely Holly. You can find her online. She is, man, Holly's a piece of work, man. She is a piece of work. She is a pistol packing, drop dead gorgeous, super hardcore conservative. She's my conspiracy mistress. Brian, you caught that, huh? Ryan, I'm glad you caught that, man. Yeah, there was a method. There was definitely a method to my madness. And here's the kicker. And Sonny, if you're watching, you'll appreciate this because I know you saw this as well and just thought, well, I reached in. I was looking because I've been in a tank top and long sleeves and everything like all freaking week, and I reached in to one of my little organizer pods, that I carry with me on the road, and just grabbed it. And this shirt was at the top of the pile right there. So, um, yeah, as the day proceeds, it'll make a lot more sense. All right, guys. So let's look at what we got for the bullet points this week. Scroll back up to the top here. Again, not really big on production. Um, Here we go. There we go. Bullet points, bullet points. There we go. All right. So, a recap of the current chaos, a definition of terms, a delineation of principles, and a declaration of intent. That's the order, and that's what we're running in. Before I go any further, I want to thank the guys who were there, everyone, this entire group of people. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to pull up the group photo here. Uh, Here we go. This was um, this was the group that was present for the Fear Inoculum transformative class with Sonny Pazikas. That, of course, is brother Sonny standing, ironically wearing red, um, right there in the middle. And of course, you can see myself and Bone off to the left, and several other of the fine gentlemen who are making their appearance here for the first time. I came to know and respect these men on a whole new level. I think we all learned a lot about ourselves. I think we all learned a lot about each other. And I think we had the privilege of some insight and enlightenment and perspective that can only come after 4 days of physical abuse and psychological humiliation. I make it sound like we were out there being waterboarded, which actually only happened to like one of us. But anyway, um, Sonny advertises class as being a transformative class, and roundabout day 2 or 3, that adjective really started to sink in. Because let's look at that. Let's look at that word, transformation, right? Transformation can mean a lot of things, but the general vibe of it is we are becoming something that we were not. We start at A and we are becoming B. The transformation is that process. And sometimes it can be through destruction. Sometimes it can be through evolution. Sometimes it can be through evolution that comes as a result of destruction, right? Think about how our muscles grow, right? You gotta tear it down and do some damage. Think about how every good thing in your life happens. There is no growth without adversity on some level, right? You can have advancement without adversity, but there is no growth without some kind of adversity. Psychological, physical, spiritual. It's there. And there was a lot of all of the above over the course of that week. And I think we all grew. And as a result, you have the same kind of bond that takes place in the microcosm, right? Not on a macrocosm level, but on a microcosm level, because the duration of time was much shorter. You had a bond that develops between people who are suffering through the same adversity and experiencing that growth together. And anything like that is a magical experience. But this class in particular, because of Sonny, and because of the way he put it together, and because of his ridiculously complex acumen, uh, I don't think if people were asking me, tell me something that I don't know about Sonny Pazikas, I would tell them. Well, first of all, I'd tell them, if I tell you, I have to kill you. That's the first thing that I would tell them. But beyond that, if I were being pressed for something that people don't fully appreciate about Sonny, it is just how deep and broad a spectrum that man's mind exists across. You look at the relevant facts, you look at his combatives acumen, you look at the fact that he is Spetsnaz, you look at the fact that he's been in this dark place and that dark place, and you look at his skill set and his acumen within those various skill sets, and you think, all of a sudden it's natural for the brain to start putting things into a box, but you don't grasp how deep Sonny is spiritually, and broad how broad and critical his thought process is. He's a very deep guy, very deep fucking guy. And when he sets about taking you on a journey, man, settle in, because it's going to be some 3 hour tour shit, man. He's going to take you to some dark places, some very dark places, not outside yourself necessarily, but he's going to take you to some dark places within yourself. He is going to force you to confront unpleasant realities about yourself, not about your strengths or your shortcomings, but your weaknesses and your fears. And that's what this class was about. Yes, we played with guns. Yes, we played with knives. Yes, I had a Frenchman punch me so hard my fucking organs displaced. It was because I remember the exact moment it happened. I'm like, whoa, and I got my eyes, and Sonny was like, and it was like, man, I got this Richard Gere thing going on, only it's a rabbit up in my guts and not a gerbil, which of course got some requisite laughter. I can hear you guys clean through the screen. Actually, it was a process, man. Yes, we played with knives. Yes, we played with guns. Yes, we beat ourselves up and beat each other up. But it wasn't about that. It was about going deeper than that. Not just testing the limits of our physicality, but our minds, our hearts, and our souls. And I don't know of anybody else in the tactical community. And I've been around for a minute, and I've trained with some guys. I don't know anybody else in the tactical community that could have put this thing together the way that he did it. And the aspect of divine intervention that came in later, um, that was something that none of us could have planned for. But everything that led up to that moment, that was all a product of Planet Sunny. And I think all of us who are there are thankful for the opportunity. And it's going to happen again next March, guys. If you're interested, Sonny Pazika's Forward Training Concepts, get your ass out and train. One of the things that I stress every week on this sermon is it's not just about making yourself harder to kill. It's about confronting things in yourself that need work. Sonny once said, every round should teach you something. Maybe this round teaches you that you suck and you need to suck less. But a lot of people get puffed up on their own egos. And you know what? One of the memes that I had thought about using for the opener was one that came. And Sonny, when I was doing show prep, I was getting prepped for the sermon, and I found this meme, and I thought it was very, very timely. The guy in the top left corner, I'm so based, I'm so Chad, I'm so alpha, soy boy seethe, and the guy down at the bottom. This illustrates the kind of humility that we're talking about. And throughout the course of the program, we're going to touch back to this, particularly in the closer. How many of you guys know somebody in that top left corner? Particularly guys in the tactical training community. They're very, very full of themselves, right? Even guys that don't train. They wear their affliction shirts and they hit the heavy bag a little bit and they're all puffed up and look how based and cool that I am. No, man. No, you're not. And I've been just as, if not more, guilty of that than most people over the course of time. What do they say in the scriptures, though? For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. One of the things that Sonny and I talked about in some of the, for lack of a better word, lecture portions of the class is that Sonny and I are both known for being those guys that will fucking, we will choke you with fucking truth cock. We'll bludgeon you to death with that big swinging thumper, whether you want it or not. Um, and we are both known for having all of the subtlety of a Tarantino screenplay directed by James Cameron dealing with an axe murderer who has decided to switch to ice picks. That's how subtle we're going to hit you. But you know what? The conclusion that we came to on that is that in itself paints you into a different kind of box. Once you become known for that, whether you want it to or not, even though you really are legitimately from your core just speaking the truth for the sake of speaking the truth because you respect the truth, it paints you into a box because it becomes, for lack of a better word, accidentally self aggrandizing. You get that feedback, you get that reward. And it gets to a point where you feel almost compelled to spit that truth, even when it might be a better idea to keep your fucking mouth shut. Little things like that, man. Self analysis. Oh, man. Outstanding. Outstanding. And I hope Jeff gets to see the replay because I told him about it and we've been chatting back and forth. At some point, we've all been that guy. No, it's true. That's true. What is that? What did Jude? Sometimes my mind explodes weeks after work. Well, yeah, man. It really is like that. If you haven't trained with him, not to be puffing Sonny's pecker or anything like that, but if you haven't trained with him and you have the opportunity to do so, you should. Um, he doesn't do classes that are, again, I'm getting off the track here, so I'll just finish this and then move on. He doesn't do classes where you're doing high round counts, turning money into noise with a high round count and running around like a swinging dick operator, getting yourself involved in situations that you as a non-swinging dick non-operator are never going to encounter in the real fucking world. He's not going to pat you on the back. You're not getting certificates. You're not looking for instructor certification under. He's going to break you down. He's going to show you everything you don't know. The only high round count class I've ever done with him, right, was the very first class that I ever did with him. And the only reason the round count was as high as it was, and it was still fairly low for most tactical classes, the only reason the round count was that high was because it was LEOs. I was one civilian in a class of 14 law enforcement officers. So, of course, those tactical TEDs had to bang, 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 or they wouldn't have felt like they were getting their money's worth. Right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. And Stone, I'm glad you're here, by the way. Love what you're doing on the archery tip. I'm glad you made it in. No, high round count does not equal good training, period. And Mike, I think you would get a lot out of training with Sonny. I really, really think you get a lot out of training with Sonny. So bust your ass on up to Fort Honey Badger and be there. Okay, so back to the bullet points. What do we got? What do we got? A recap of the current chaos. I'm just going to delve into a couple of things really, really, really quickly because I don't want to get off on a political tear here. This is much, much bigger than that. The World Economic Forum this week, you guys already know, and they have, they're calling it a conspiracy theory about nobody wants you to eat bugs. And, meanwhile, all the articles are coming out about insects being processed into protein and how it's going to benefit our bodies and benefit the planet and all these fucking things. It's another one of those, like Bongino called it, none of this is happening, but it's a good thing that it is. Nobody's trying to force you to eat bugs. But here's why it's a great thing that we're trying to force you to eat bugs. Bad enough that they're trying to take away meat from everyone. Even independent of that, even for the sake of the vegetarians and the vegans, this is what the World Economic Forum came through with. This is how rice is hurting the planet. Yeah, there's an article. You can Google it. And it was one of a number of articles. Like you do a quick Google search. What is it? Rice is bad for planet. Enter that into a Google search. The first thing that pops up is from the World Bank. The second thing that pops up is from the World Economic Forum. The World Bank, greening the rice that we eat. World Economic Forum. This is how rice is hurting the planet. Third article, Scientific American. Should we eat less rice? Food print, all about the environmental impacts of rice production. It goes on like this. Not one. Now, again, I'm not going to take the time to do the DuckDuckGo thing, but I promise you to actually, you know what, that'll take about 2 seconds. So I am going to do that actually. Um, so we go DuckDuckGo and we use exactly the same search term. Exactly the same search term. Rice is bad for planet. Click, copy, click, paste. And we'll see what DuckDuckGo comes up with. Okay, totally different sources. Again, the same vibe because that is what we're searching for. But the first ones that are coming up are instead of how bad rice is, Scientific American, how climate change is threatening rice farming. Scientific American, should we eat less rice? Food and climate change. That's the thing. So it's a totally different vibe. It's still painting things in a negative, but it's not painting rice as bad. It's painting climate change as bad for rice. This is how they lie to you. They jack with the algorithm, and this is how they pull the wool over your eyes. In any case, the World Economic Forum is saying that we need to phase out the production of rice. Here's what they don't bother telling you is that rice provides 50% of the world with 80% of its nutritional needs. Let me say that again. Half the world counts on rice for 80% of its caloric intake. It feeds the fucking world. And now they are going to tell us that it's bad for it. At least with methane and cow farts, you can make a case. I mean, it's like the bread thing. Bread only enabled us to migrate around the planet, but now it's bad for everybody. I get that. It's a genetic modified foods thing. Irrelevant. The World Economic Forum and the World Bank are telling us that the crop that is responsible for 80% of the food needs for half the planet is bad and has to be phased out of production. Are you starting to get it yet? They want you dead. Billions of you. And I will not lie to you guys. There are large parts of me that goes, yeah, cool, it's in the herd, definitely. Not like this. Not through state control manipulation. If the hand of God swings down with a real pandemic, you guys already know the next two words that are going to jump out of my mouth. Come on, you already know it. First one's airborne. Second one is what? That's right, airborne filovirus. Come with that airborne filovirus? Yeah, man, I'm all about thinning the herd like that. War, righteous war for thinning the herd, all about that. This subtle, gutless manipulation, these subtle, demonic mind games, leading people to their own demise with lies. That I will not abide. Next bullet point. Chinese police station in New York leads to arrests. You guys may remember several months back when the story first surfaced that the Chinese had police stations in New York City and a number of other major U.S. cities. Let me say that again. The Chinese Communist Party has established police stations inside the borders of the United States. That should be the end of the story, full stop. Shut them down, get them out. We understand that intelligence networks operate across borders. We understand that there are Chinese spies in the United States. In fact, Eric Swalwell on the Senate Intelligence Committee was fucking one for a while. He's still in the Senate. He's just not on the subcommittee anymore. But he will be as soon as the Dems take it back. Point being, spying is one thing. But to openly have a police station, a literal police station for the Chinese Communist Party inside the borders of the United States. Ponder that. They were harassing Chinese dissidents within the borders of the United States, and finally, someone at the NYPD said, "We're done with this shit." They contacted the Justice Department. And the Justice Department, surprisingly enough, found at least 8 agents willing to do their job inside the FBI. They arrested 8 for harassment. That's all. Not, any sort of domestic breach of protocol, but just harassment. Meanwhile, grandmothers trespassing at the Capitol have been held for over a year on misdemeanor charges, but they finally got around to arresting 8 Chinese nationals that were here to harass Chinese dissidents in the United States. How is this allowed to go on? You wonder how bad it's getting. It's getting bad. And the third and final thing that I want to hit on, as far as catching up on the week's chaos, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson parts ways with Fox News. You guys have heard me go on and on and on about the work of Jonathan Haidt, right? Haidt nails it every time with regard to us understanding the left better than the left understands us. Okay. They, for all their lamentation of media echo chambers, they exist within one, and every study that Haidt has done continues to prove that. If you ask a leftist, you ask them a question and you tell them, okay, I want you to answer this question like you think a conservative would, and I want you to answer this question like you think a moderate would. They answer the conservative question like a fascist, and they answer the moderate question like a sociopath. Why? Again, Haidt. Over and over again, every study, no matter how many times, no matter how many variables, proves it. Conservatives get 70% of their news from conservative sources, 30% of their news from liberal sources. Moderates, exact flip-flop. Moderates get 30% of their news from conservative sources and 70% of their news from liberal sources. Why? Because liberal sources dominate the mainstream media. It stands to reason that if you're a milquetoast fence sitting middle of the road kind of guy, that's where most of your news is going to come from. Self-proclaimed liberals and leftists, every study, no matter how many times, no matter how many variables, 90 to 95% of their news comes from liberal or leftist sources. And they're the ones lamenting echo chambers. They do not understand the full width and breadth of what happened with Tucker. And I'm going to do a deep dive on this next week because I've got more important stuff to deal with this week. But I'm going to hit this really, really quickly. Tucker Carlson, what liberals do not understand is that true conservatives want Fox News to fail worse than they do. Because Fox has controlled opposition. They're mock conservatives. The only person with a spine and balls at that network just left. I hated Tucker Carlson during the Bush years. He was a neocon shill. That's how I saw him. And it wasn't until last week that I heard an interview with the guy lamenting how stupid he had been and how he got played and how he felt like a fool, and of all the regrets in his media career, getting suckered into being a tool for the Bush junta was his biggest regret. I've always found him entertaining, even when I disagree with him. I've always found him as objective as anyone else, more objective, really, than anyone at that network. And he would speak truths that no one on Fox would speak. He's the only one to come out opposed to our efforts in Ukraine. He's the only one that called out Nord Stream 2 being a U.S. operation. And on and on and on. He's the only one at Fox that seriously said the vaccines are bullshit, the masks are bullshit, this pandemic is bullshit, it's all a control mechanism. He's the only one that addressed the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. You feel me? Tucker may not be your bag of donuts, but I feel like he speaks from an honest place. And much like Kenobi in that lightsaber fight with Darth Vader, you got Tucker looking at Fox going, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. He did a 2-minute Twitter video the next day. That Twitter video had more views within an hour than his average show in that time slot would have done in 3 days. Meanwhile, Fox lost millions of viewers. They're hemorrhaging, and it's just getting worse. The long and the short of it is, the era of legacy media is over. The propaganda ministry is falling apart. They are flailing. They are desperate. We will do a deeper dive next week on this. They are flailing and they are desperate and willing to do anything. It is voices of individuals that are going to carry the day. Thankfully, you have people like Tucker Carlson. You have people like Glenn Beck, nut job though he may be. People like Alex Jones, for fuck's sake. Those are the ones that are going to carry the day, no matter how you feel about any one particular line item or any particular point or ideology. They're the ones that are going to carry the day. The tide is turning. What do we say in the opener? How do you keep from going insane? Knowing that God has the last word. Stay with me, boy. Stay with me. I see you out there twitching a little bit. Show growth and a deeper understanding of how the narrative is led on both sides of the media. Yes. And he admitted, Mike, he had the courage to admit that he could have been wrong. Not just to us, he had the courage to admit that to himself years ago, which is what put him on this path. Do you see how this dovetails in with the subject matter of today? To be able to admit to yourself that your preconceived notions may have been in error. To re-examine things. One of the things that we learned in that class, what keeps us from that re-examination? Fear. Fear. You can puff yourself up as much as you want. I'm not, but look at me, bold and unafraid. No, man, you're not. You're scared shitless. Might not be scared of anything outside yourself, but you're afraid of parts of yourself. You're afraid to examine parts of yourself. That is fear. And to deny that is not only fear, but deception. No, I did not. No, I did not. Did not see you twitch, buddy. So, on a different level, but same basic ballpark, same basic. And, Tom, yeah, Fox is pro American as Crenshaw. You know what? And again, man, I got to give the full spectrum here. Again, across the board, you got to give credit where credit is due. Crenshaw has been super strong on the border. Super fucking strong on the border. I give him that, whether he means it or not. He's paid lip service. He's been super strong on domestic policy and all the harms that come from having that open border. As far as foreign policy goes, he is as much a shill for the neocons as he's just, God damn it, Dennis. If you know, you know. Crenshaw is as much a shill as Tucker was for the Bush junta. Dan Crenshaw, thank you for your service. Resign. For the love of God and all things holy and righteous in this world and in this nation, resign. Thank you for your strength on the border. I would prefer not to disappear in a thermonuclear vapor cloud because a cadaver that you claim to oppose has financial roots in a country that you, Mr. Crenshaw, may be able to find on a map, but none of the people that claim to support this war could. And that'll be the end of that. And one last thing on the fact check. You noticed when we were drifting through during the opener. Let me find this. During the opener, I clicked on this little headline. UN says minors can consent to sex. That seems like a pretty clear statement. That doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of wiggle room on that. Particularly for the child who's trying to wiggle out from under the adult who is, putting things where they're not supposed to be. UN says minors can consent to sex. That got fact checked. And this was the fact check. All right. On and on, word salad, word salad, word salad. But when he finally comes around to first, it was same with every fact check. Impugn the source, impugn the source. Time to QAnon, impugn the source, and then we're going to deal with the actual subject matter. So I'll take you straight to the subject matter with respect, and this is the Associated Press fact check. With respect respect to the enforcement of criminal law, any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be applied in a non discriminatory manner. Enforcement may not be linked to the sex, gender, or participants of age or consent to marriage. English translation. All that says is we can make it perfectly legal for you to bone an 11-year-old so long as it's legal for a gay man to bone an 11-year-old boy just as legal as he's fucking an 11-year-old girl. That's what that means. And this was the fact check. Moreover, and I'll close with the moreover, sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual in fact, if not in law. So, as long as it's legal for a 47-year-old man to fuck an 11-year-old boy or an 11-year-old girl, and as long as said 11-year-old says they consented to it, are you following me? The same way an 11-year-old boy says that deep in his heart he knows he's an 11-year-old girl, so could you please cut my cock off and could we not tell my parents about it? Depravity, people. Depravity. And I'm tired of doing anything but calling it what it is. In this context, the enforcement of criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of persons under 18 years of age to make decisions about engaging in consensual sexual conduct and their right to be heard in matters concerning them. So the headline was 100% correct. 100%. But they still felt it necessary to fact check it. Context this, context that, word salad, word salad, word salad. Impugn the source, impugn the source. Starting to get it yet? Sick. So that was a recap of the current chaos. How about a definition of terms for the people who are here for the very first time? I've got a couple down here that I'd like to bounce off of you. Some of the hashtags and some of the sound bites and some of the bullet points, and some are liked more than others and some are understood better than others. If you look down at the bottom lower left-hand corner, you will see Reverend Bart spitting hate facts and swinging truth cock. My most popular hashtag, by the way, is still intellectual gymnastics, but we'll get to all of that. Clear definition of terms. Hate fact. Hate fact is an irrefutable fact or statistic or number or determined result of scientific process. It is a fact. It is an indisputable fact that you're not allowed to utter because it presents a particular demographic or a particular individual in an unflattering fashion. Hate fact. Hate fact. Anybody think of a hate fact? Anybody want to give me a bullet point rundown on a hate fact? Okay. African Americans represent 13% of the United States population and commit just above 51% of the homicides. Most of which, by the way, are 88% of those are committed against other blacks. These are statistics. These are facts. But if I say it, I am an evil racist who wants to put them back in chains and yada, yada, yada. That is a hate fact. Hate fact. People who identify as trans, almost without exception, have at least 2 coexisting mental problems. Suicidal ideation, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, at least 2, almost without exception. This is a documented fact, but to bring that up is to impugn their right to exist. No, I'm merely making a factual statement. Well, that, my friends, is a hate fact. Okay? So hopefully that will clear up that confusion when I'm spitting things that paint certain demographics in an unflattering light, but they are indisputable numbers. That is considered a hate fact. Sometimes it's as simple as saying something that is not even impugning but completely neutral, as if, for instance, getting back to the trans issue, gender dysphoria, if left, most, don't get me lying on that hate fact. So I will say most, because I can definitely say most. I just don't have the specific percentage, but most cases involving gender dysphoria not treated at all with gender affirming care. Talking about hormones, talking about mutilations. If they leave it alone and provide them psychological counseling, it resolves itself by the age of 18 in most cases. That is a fact. But because I am straying from the narrative of if a boy thinks he's a girl, he knows what's best for himself, let's cut his cock off. Therefore, that fact that I am stating is a hashtag hate fact. Everybody clear on that definition? Good. Now, next one, actually, next two, a little bit more complicated. Grazer. Hashtag grazer. Grazer, by the way, I should point out, is a proper noun. All of these are proper nouns and should be capitalized. Don't use a lowercase g with grazer. I'm not a grammar Nazi, but I am a spelling nationalist. So, capital G, proper noun. Grazer. That is my universal derogatory for ostensibly humans who behave like herd animals. They are completely given to the narrative. They are the ones in the Matrix, if you remember that series of films, that are so connected, so inured to the system, that they will fight to defend it, even if it is clearly in error. They are completely unaware of their own self contradictions. I mean, completely and blissfully unaware of their own contradictions. In fact, I'm going to pull this up because I am sure that we can find a few examples just with a couple of clicks of the keys. And boom, here we go. There we go. All right. For instance, someone who say we can go back and find a picture of them at their wedding and they are engaging in their first kiss and they have a face diaper on because it was the height of the COVID pandemic. That would be easy enough, right? We can just define that. That would be considered grazer behavior. Further, being unaware of one's own contradictions, not seeing a problem with, say, for instance, 2014 after Maidan, not seeing the irony that America's first black president installed an interim government in Ukraine made up of right sector neo-Nazis. And when confronted with that, saying that there was no inconsistency. That, my friends, boys and girls, is considered grazer behavior. There are about 1,000,001 quotable BART moments that Neil Ross is keeping track of, and they will be in the quotable BART volume 1. Stuff to delineate the way that grazers behave. It's also the root word of other words like grazer glitter. Grazer glitter is anything that is complete utter uselessness but impresses the hell out of the herd. Say guys that show up to class with a $500 tactical watch that they can't even exhaust the features on. This is grazer behavior. Following the narrative when it's been shown to you clearly and irrefutably that the narrative no longer serves. That is grazer behavior. People that continue to get boosters after it's come out that the vaccines have side effects and they've had COVID 14 times and still want to blame the pandemic on the unvaccinated. Grazer behavior. Conservatives who for nearly 3 years said that we can't trust a fucking word that comes out of the mouth of the United States mainstream media because they lied about COVID, they lied about the vaccines, they lied about the mask. But the very second things kick off in Ukraine, suddenly decide the media has to be trusted and taken at their word, and anybody opposing the war in Ukraine is un-American. That, boys and girls, also grazer. So, we're all clear on that. Pollyannas. That's a little bit different. Pollyannas are in the same, they're in the same ballpark, same sport as the grazers. In fact, Pollyannas often grow into grazers, and grazers have a great deal of influence on Pollyannas, but Pollyannas generally come from a good place. It's like drawing the distinction between liberals and leftists. Leftists are irredeemable scumbags, ideologues, zealots, cult members, cannot be reasoned with, cannot be talked to coming from an honest place. Can't be. Liberals, as a general rule, are misguided, short sighted, naive, but they are, in their heart of hearts, good people coming from a good place. They really want to make the world a better place. And they believe, right? They believe that those liberal policies are the way to get to that better world. God love Pollyannas. I mean that. God love Pollyannas. Their heart's in the right place. Their brains, if they exist at all, are not. The difference, the largest difference between a Pollyanna and a grazer is if you present the case in a clear and irrefutable way to a Pollyanna, they generally go silent, right? They don't double down on stupid. They just don't. Can we just not talk about this anymore? Can we just really? I just get uncomfortable talking about this because they know. Some will actually admit that they may have been wrong. It can't happen. Grazers are not that way. Grazers will continue to double down on stupid because they are committed to the narrative. They exist on both sides. They exist on both sides. Oh, you want some grazer behavior, right? Go up to one of your MAGA friends, and again, I say this, from a neutral position on Trump. Go to one of your MAGA friends the next time they're bitching about, vaccine mandates, and remind them that it was Trump that sped the process and made it possible for Pfizer to get through with no accountability and not be able to be sued. Remind them of that. You'll see some grazer shit real fucking quick. That's not an indictment on Trump. That's an indictment on people not being able to hold those thoughts at the same time and see, we got a little logical difficulty here. Okay? Don't think I'm just picking on one. You guys know where my loyalties lie. Don't think I'm just picking on one. Pollyannas, not quite to the level of grazer. They can still be reasoned with, and they're generally docile, harmless. They just want the world to be a better place. Commendable on some levels. Both Pollyannas and grazers engage in a sport that we like to call intellectual gymnastics. Again, getting back to some points of reference for that. Basically, Orwell put it pretty well, as he does with so many things, that sometimes it takes someone of extreme intellect to believe something so completely stupid. Like only a college educated, master's degree, PhD kind of guy could believe something that truly stupid, because there's a lot of intellectual gymnastics required to squeeze that into the logic box. We'll pop that out. the intellectual gymnastics that it required for people to accuse me of being a racist. On a lot of levels, that's a fair accusation, but to accuse me of being a racist because I posted the logo of the Azov Battalion, that is a neo Nazi brigade in the Ukrainian army under Zelensky, a Jew, oddly enough, and accused me of being anti Semitic because I was speaking out. I was speaking out against Zelensky in the post. Basically, the post that I have here, it was the logo of the Azov Battalion, and pointing out the fact that these guys are neo Nazis and that Zelensky folded them into the regular Ukrainian army. I was accused of anti Semitism for this because I posted that. That took some intellectual gymnastics, but um, there are better examples. How about this one? If the media would have us believe, as they did during the pandemic, because DeSantis gave the vaccines to who first? The old people, because they were most at risk. But the media took that in a different direction. The media would have us believe that DeSantis was so callous that the only reason he's trying to vaccinate the elderly is to keep them alive because they vote Republican. That took some intellectual gymnastics. But as long as we're playing that game, roll out the yoga mats, and I'll fire back with, does it not stand to reason that that's exactly why Cuomo lets so many old people in New York die? Because after all, the old people tend to vote Republican. Basically, it's looking at something, seeing what it is, and finding a way to fold yourself intellectually into a position where you can call it something other than what it is with a straight face. It takes an educated man. My retort to it is always this. It's one of my favorite quotes ever from Aldous Huxley, pioneer in psychedelic research. The course of every intellectual, and this dovetails on some of the stuff we discussed this week. The course of every intellectual, if he stays at it long and tenaciously enough, arrives at the obvious, a position from which the non intellectual has never stirred. I'm looking at A, but I need it to be C. So in my head, I'm going to fold this and twist myself up and roll and backflip and somersault to a position where I can touch that and say, C, A is just like C. You want to know who's really guilty of that? Tactical crowd. Lest you think I'm picking on grazers and Pollyannas. Want to know who's been guilty of that before? Me. You. Anyone who's ever trained and found excuses not to work on the areas where they fell short. That's intellectual gymnastics, boys and girls. And it is the quickest way to hamper your own growth and to hamper your own progress. Two more. Maggot. Self explanatory. Feeding on death. Feeding on dead, rotting material. Whether we're talking physically, whether we're talking emotionally, spiritually, they're eating death. Eating the corpse of the old world. It's my general purpose derogatory for loathsome creatures. Creatures who rage in their immaturity, disgust, stupidity, and ignorance against a society that they not only do not understand but could not have created themselves. They're also guilty of intellectual gymnastics. A lot of times, grazers will turn into maggots under the right circumstances. I'm talking about groups like Antifa. I'm talking about groups like Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about pharmaceutical companies using celebrities, using Sesame Street to sell the vaccine to children. That's a maggot move. I'm talking about, and here's where grazer crosses the line into maggot. A grazer parent that back in the day when genetically modified foods were like all the rage would put their kid out on a protest line holding a sign that said, "My child is not a science experiment." And then as soon as the pandemic crisis kicked off, was putting their child's name on a waiting list to get an experimental vaccine that nobody knew anything about, even though the risk to them was infinitesimally small. That's grazer moving into maggot territory. Grazer moving into maggot territory number two. A parent who, quite righteously, if they saw me trying to give their child a bag of methamphetamine, would do everything in their level best to eliminate me from the gene pool, as well they should. They will then go a week later and pay a doctor for the privilege of prescribing that child amphetamine salts in the form of Adderall. I think there are probably a couple of you out there like, well, hey man, my kid, I don't care. That's between you, your kid, and God. As far as I'm concerned, that's a maggot move. At the very least, it's a grazer move. But I tend to reserve maggot for a criminal class, for communists, for Antifa, pedophiles, people that enable any of the above. That's maggot move. Okay? When I refer to Antifa as maggots, when I refer to thieving tweaker fucks who, in spite of every effort to reach them, will play on the sympathies of Pollyannas to continue their thieving, lying, deceptive, hurtful, violent ways. Maggots. So when you hear me use these terms and you see me use these hashtags, I want to make sure we're on the same page. But the last one, the most important one, truth cock. Truth cock. When I say I am the Reverend, that is the gospel. I'm about to choke you with some truth cock. You just got fucked with the truth cock. It's coming from a person who generally uses the word fuck as punctuation. And I realize it's going to turn a lot of people off. I have no issues with that. What do we got here? Pollyanna's average social worker. Yes. My goodness, I have missed a good portion. I missed a good portion of shit. Yes, write that book. Forget about the other crazy idea. Damn it, Sonny. That book's getting written, bro. That book's getting written. I don't care. I'm paraphrasing Shakespeare. Let the book be written though the heavens fall. Sonny, you're writing a damn book. Actually, you just sit back. You just sit back and call it. I will write the damn book. You're lucky I didn't put the tentative cover together because I promise you I wouldn't. Next week, saddle up. Yes. So the quotable Bart and an as yet undetermined named book from Sonny Puzikis will both be released through Reverend Bart Press very soon. Sonny Puzikis, he needs to do both. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in on that. Yep, definitely grazes on all sides. You're right. Sorry, guys, I missed this whole part of the commentary. Um, that's a great example, Roman. J.K. Rowling, being a TERF, went from being the darling of the left to the most hated person. And by the way, if you haven't listened to the podcast series yet, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, I went over it several weeks ago on the sermon. If you have not downloaded that yet, you need to. You should. J.K. Rowling is now right up there on the Reverend Bart pantheon of free speech heroes. And how did Huffamoose not make the list? Because it didn't apply to anything we're talking to today, Dennis. I'll deal with Huffamoose another day. But I just wanted the guys who were on board, who are new, who may not be familiar with some of the lineage and what it really carried. But here's the thing about Truth Cock. Truth Cock, and this is a perfect segue into where we're going. Truth Cock, that is a truth that is beyond uncomfortable. It's a truth that's beyond uncomfortable that comes to you in a way that is undeniable and you cannot resist. As in choking on truth cock. When a truth hits you so hard, with such precision, and coming at you with so much force that you literally can't swallow it all, you are getting choked with the truth cock. Sometimes we run in denial, and when we run away, we turn our backs. And that's when, oh yeah, it'll get just that brutal. That truth cock is backdooring you. You got fucked with the truth cock, and they're going in dry. No spit, no mercy. The truth cock is only vicious and painful like that because you are actively fighting it. You're actively fighting it. I know there right now people are bristling like hell at the rape analogy, and I get that. But follow me, man. What's the difference between sex and rape? Consent, right? You should embrace the truth, no matter where it leads you. Sometimes it will lead you into some uncomfortable places. But I promise you, if you don't accept it, if you don't digest it, if you don't assimilate it, if you don't take it in, you will get choked with the truth cock. You will get fucked with the truth cock. Ain't one of us out there who hasn't at least been slapped aside the face with that truth cock once or twice. I'm not impugning anybody's, sexual proclivities, dude. You hit how you hit, bro. You dig what you dig. I'm not judging. Even in light of the things that I'm about to tell you, I'm not judging on that front. Truth, courage. I have always prided myself on having courage. I have always prided myself, not just to myself, but to you. And you guys have come to trust me for that, in being ruthless in pursuit of truth. But I have something that I want to share with y'all. And if I get choked up, just kind of bear with me. Right, Ryan? Um, this is emotional and heavy for me to get into, but it's also transformative. And that will be the benefit of it. Christy, actually, Christy, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, honey. Thank you for stopping in. I have not been honest. I have not been honest with myself. I've not been honest with my friends, even my trusted friends. I have not been honest with my wife. There has been something speaking to me for a long time now. Another thing about the truth cock. Truth cock will just come popping out at the least convenient moments. And some of y'all have even made observations to this end that I have been speaking a lot more in scriptural references, that I've been a lot more evangelical and fire and brimstone in these sermons, that I'm getting a lot more comfortable with words like evil, existential threat to good, spiritual continuum. Why? Because there has been something that has been speaking to me for months, many months. Since at least before my father died back in August. And a couple of weeks before that, when my bro Austin died of a fentanyl overdose. I've been wrestling with some spiritual matters. You guys know, and I've never made any secret of this, that I was raised in the church and I was steeped in the scriptures. Yes, for years, Phil, glad you made it. For years, I have followed an ostrich path. Old Northern European, Scandinavian pagan religion, worship of the old gods, Wotan, Thunar, Thor, Odin, lack of a better word, Norse mythology. It appealed to me and resonated to me in metaphor and has been a source of great strength for me for the last 30 years. But something has been reaching out. Something's been trying to reach me. And I felt it. And at first, it was easy enough to shrug off. It's like, yeah, all right, yeah, because I could pay it to lip service. And it wasn't lip service. I meant what I said. When I say there is power in Scripture, I meant that. I meant that shit. It was speaking to me on a deeper level, and I wasn't ready to hear it. Roman, you will love the irony of this. I'm going to tell some tales out of school here. It was being around Roman's family years and years and years ago that actually helped me to distance myself. Oh, wow, man. Pike, I'm stealing that. Just know in your heart I'm stealing that. Um, wow, it's brilliant. Um, Being around Roman's family. It's the first family not of faith that I'd ever been around. Comfortable with things that I thought at the time were blasphemies, you know? And they didn't lead me astray. It was just, it kind of took me to a place where it was like, oh, okay, I get it. Not everyone believes like this, right? Other things happened at that point in my life, again, late teens, early 20s, that took me away from the path. There for a while, I was a hardcore atheist. When we're done, we're worm food. That's the end of it. Didn't seek for anything past that at any kind of spiritual level. I found ostrich. Um, Catherine, my ex-wife, who I was with, when I found that path. 1992. 30 years has been a source of strength. But something was speaking to me. Things that would pop up that I could not write off to coincidence. Items that would bring a particular scripture passage into my hands, into my head, up in my face. And I could feel that something was reaching out. Couldn't identify it because I haven't heard that speak to me since I was a child, since I was raised in the church. I haven't heard that. There is a principle that is spoken of by a number of priests, a number of pastors, a number of philosophers even, that oftentimes you cannot receive the message until you have been brought to a point of humility. You have to be low enough to receive a certain message. Why do you think so many people come to Jesus in prison? Because clearly they've realized, is it desperation? A lot of cases it is. Holy shit, I don't know. Please save me. As often as not, those jailhouse confessions are exactly the product of that. Let's not get it twisted. But you have to be brought low. You have to be brought to serious humility before you're seriously going to be open to the message. And I hadn't been humbled in a long time. I've been I've been beaten and broken. I haven't been humbled. When I lost my friend Austin, it brought me low, but I wasn't humbled, right? Instead, I puffed up that ego, made it all about those maggots bringing the fentanyl across the border, which was true, broke me, but it didn't humble me. My father, greatest man I ever known. Every single good thing that I became as a man is a result of my father, and he passed. And that one brought me low, but it didn't humble me. Kicked in the teeth with a few other life events, cancer diagnosis with Charlie, and that that got up in my gut, but it didn't humble me. Instead, it made me react the way I always do to things like that. Muscle up, I can get through this. Thinking that it was me that was carrying me through all these things, thinking about my own strength. And my own strength is very real, guys. I want to be very clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not. I don't want there to be any room for any misinterpretation of what's going on here. It's a lot about humility, man. A lot about humility and being able to receive that message and the courage in that. When I say courage, courage is following the truth no matter where it leads you. Your courage may lead you in a different direction. I'm only speaking for myself. I'm relating to you. This is, as they say in the church, my testimony. I was at a low point. It's one of the reasons I signed up for this class. I was low, but I wasn't humbled. I was getting back into a whole lot of the old self destructive behaviors, temper, hair triggered, picking fights for no fucking reason whatsoever, letting my physical health go, thinking, hey man, as long as I'm lifting heavy weights, I'm gonna be fine. They're gonna fight, thinking way too highly of fight skills that I had not trained properly in a long time. Again, don't get it twisted. Average bar fight, average bar fight, I got nothing to sweat. But if it's not an average bar fight, guess what? Those are perishable skills. But hey, man, I'm lifting heavy weights. I'm punching a heavy bag, doing about three or four rounds on a heavy bag. Every time I lift the weights, my diet shit, and I'm really not doing any, hardcore cardio or anything like that. I haven't actually sparred anybody in a long fucking time. But I get the airsoft guns out. And I send some rounds down range. I move around a little bit. Little hand switch, little hand switch. Man, I'm good. Puffed up my own fucking ego. Ready for anything though. Fuck around and find out, right? Honest question for honest answer. Character flaws you hope a spiritual awareness will correct. And you know what? And that, and this is why I love you, Ryan. Honest question for honest answer. Using this platform to address character flaws you hope the spiritual awareness will correct. Or awareness of one begot the other. And thank you. There you go. You know me well, Ryan. You know me well. A lot better than most. What I'm addressing, again, as I get further into the story, this will make a lot more sense. Not even character flaws, not even failings. There was just a distinct lack of humility that the importance that I had placed on certain things, my own strength, my own this, my own that. It's pride fucking with you. Sticking with the Pulp Fiction, I had that Jules moment. But we're getting into all that. I signed up for this class because I knew from 11 years ago, the very first class that I ever did with Sonny, I came in all puffed up, full of my own ego. My physicality wasn't where it needed to be. My head was all puffed up with how fucking tough. I was all puffed up, man. Lying to myself. Lying to myself so thoroughly that I could actually carry it. Not about anything, but I will never intentionally mislead someone, but someone outside myself. Right, Ryan. And that is exactly the thing. The pride. When you and I speak, we are humble because I'm with someone who I consider my peer, right? And I can be real with you, Ryan, in the same way that I can be real with Sonny, that I can be real with someone who I have that closeness, that bond, that intimacy with. But I knew I had to get in this class. Why? Because 11 years, longer than 11 years ago. Wow, dating myself now. 2011, 3 days in a hot Texas sun with Sonny Pazikis and 14 LEOs. I went in full battle rattle. I had my LBE, had my vest all tricked out, mag pouches, holsters, everything where I want. I was proud of that motherfucker. Been a long time putting that together. Tested it with my little quick draw and all my bullshit. I got on that firing line. You get on the firing line with Sonny Pazikis, it takes about 47 seconds to realize that you know precisely shit about fuck. Inside of 2 hours, I was stripping gear off my rig. By the second day, I had my pistol in a hip holster and was carrying spare AK mags in the side pockets of my BDUs, which Sonny derisively referred to as Afghan carry, which I thought was brilliant. I see you have adopted the Afghan carry, comrade. Yeah, I have. Thanks, Sonny. Thank you for that. It humbled my ass. Humbled my ass in a way that I could not deny. And it forced me to reach down deeper and start taking on new challenges. I took up Olympic wrestling at the age of 41. Not the brightest career move for a dude whose hips already bone on bone. Bad knees, wrecked spine. But I did it because I had to challenge myself after that. I sought out the challenges because I realized, groveling, that I ain't shit. It doesn't matter how the rest of the world sees me. I know that's me getting choked with some truth cock. And not to be a size queen, but I hadn't had a big old fat slab of truth cock in a long fucking time. I told you the language wasn't going to be safe for work. I told y'all. I warned you. Don't bristle now, motherfucker. You're in it. I knew I needed to be in this class. I needed to be humbled. I needed to be open to realize exactly how bad I was slipping in a way that I couldn't even deny it. But I wasn't counting on this. Wasn't counting on this. Every single day that we were there, the weather did a 180-degree pivot off of what the forecast was. There were days that we're at Fort Honey Badger. There were days that we were supposed to be out in the rain and the mud, that it was, bright and sunny. There were days that we were supposed to be bright and sunny and we needed to be under here because we're doing low light work at this point, and low light with the mud is not a good idea. And we had a flow with how everything was going. And the weather said, nah, you're going to do this on this day, and this flow is going to follow that, and you're going to deal with that. On top of the adversity, your adversity flow is going to be all fucked up. Keep in mind the details of weather and where we're supposed to be, because these are all going to be relevant to the story. It's all going to be relevant to the story. It was just as physically demanding as you would expect, particularly for a fat-ass toothless cripple who's let himself go for a while. The knife work that we did, reminding you that your reflexes are not what they used to be, fat boy. There was one pistol drill that we did that I can't even name for you right now. But suffices to say, there is no winning. There are just degrees of losing. Believe it or not, I actually did better on that drill than I thought I was going to do. And I will have you know that throughout the duration of that drill, I don't remember the exact time count or how many steps, but my heart rate only went from 120 to 150. Still sucking wind though, man. But you realize you don't have it together. And what keeps you from looking at those things? It's fear, bro. It's fear. Fear. You're afraid. No, I'm not afraid, man. I'm big. No, no, man. You're a scared little bitch. Because you can say something to someone you know and it becomes cathartic. You release that fear and say that in an honest way to them, but you're still lying to yourself. I lied to myself about my level of capabilities, but most of all, what I started on here, I lied to myself about that voice and where it was taking me. And real courage is the courage to follow that truth no matter where it goes, no matter what it means for you, no matter what you have to re examine. Not me, I got all the answers. No, no, you don't. It was grueling physically. We were up very, very late. Didn't get done till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We worked in low light. We worked in high stress. There were psychological aspects of it that I will not reveal here because you need to take the fucking class if you really want to know. But remember what I said about not being able to receive that message until you've been properly humbled. Sunday, final training day. Got something scheduled for in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we're going to finish up with some knife work that we had to cut short because of the low light conditions, transitioning to something else the night before. Again, nothing went according to the laid out schedule and how it was supposed to be. Almost as if you put something together, you know, as if it were ordained. We were supposed to be in a certain place at a certain time. Sonny took us Sunday. We had a cup of coffee, little cafe in town that I won't name. It was the only thing open on a Sunday, little small town Texas. He took us to church. Sonny, you may or may not know, is a devout man of faith. And saying he's a man of faith doesn't exactly do it justice because he is of the Russian Orthodox faith, which is kind of the Spetsnaz of Christian religions, if I'm honest. You have to, hear me out on the analogy, because Spetsnaz doesn't just take life takers and heartbreakers, man. They want thinkers. They want thinkers. So you got to be sharp here and here to be Spetsnaz. Totally stands to reason. The analogy is perfectly accurate as far as I'm concerned with respect to Russian Orthodox faith. We walked in. I have been in churches in the last year or two, and I have felt that power that I hadn't felt since I was a child. And I always respected the faith. Even when I was on the Asa True path, I always respected the faith. I always said that I would stand side by side with my Christian brethren when the day came. Why? we will have that conversation, right? Why? Because I respected the faith and I understood that they were persecuted in this culture, and I understood there's a reason why Europe and Western civilization was referred to as Christendom, because they were the anchor that held together the greatest civilization this country's ever produced. So I respected it on a spiritual level. I respected it on a historical level. I respected the scriptures because I knew the strength that was in those scriptures. I was raised in it. And I would feel that power anytime I was in church. I felt it. I could even feel that voice nagging at me. You know, Bart, you have a gift. You have a gift. We need warriors. It's time to come home. Shrugged it off. Wouldn't I hear it? Hey man, I'm here. I'm here. You know, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. No, we stood in that church, and I got to walking around. Everybody else was facing the front. Father David was reciting, and they were going through the service. And in the Orthodox tradition, their Easter celebration stretches over weeks, and they have Sundays devoted or days devoted to each of the disciples. And I walked around, and I'm taking in all this powerful imagery. And I understood from a historical perspective, this is how they got the peasantry in there. You come to this big ornate thing, you're overwhelmed. Senses are overwhelmed. That's how you process the shit logically. There's something bigger at work here, and I felt it here. The day before, I spent 6 straight minutes of nonstop movement discharging weapons at targets. And my heart rate only went from 120 to 150. And here I am standing in this church. Standing, walking around, jump right back to 150. I'm looking at the images and I'm hearing, and the Sunday festival, the Sunday that we were celebrating, was the day of Thomas. What do we know about Thomas? Thomas was the doubter. And as Father David is reciting, I caught myself just unconsciously. See, along with the verse, I will believe when I reach and I put my fingers in the wounds. I will believe. And I'm just subconsciously making the gestures. When I put my hand in the side, I will believe. It was right, probably right back. They went into the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed. Exactly the same stuff that I've been brought up with. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, died and was buried. The third day he rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven, sat at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, from whence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Christian Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. I remembered it verbatim from childhood. And I felt something speaking to me in that place. And a skeptic, quite correctly, skeptic would step up and go, yeah, man, well, you're beaten down. You're not quite in your right mind. Fucking imagery overwhelmed you and everything. No, it's bigger than that. Thomas. What did Christ say to Thomas? You believe because you have seen, but blessed is he who has not seen and yet believes. Tap, tap, tap. Hey, Bart, you listening? I'm listening. I already told you I respect it, all right? I'm here. By the way, this is beautiful. By the way, I'm getting a little emotional. And I'm here, all right? We got through to the end of the service. Sonny took us to meet Father David. We still had half a day of training worth to do. And it was cold outside, uncharacteristic for Texas, and raining. There were 4 public parks. I know this because Sonny and I were both on our phones trying to Google a place to go that would have a canopy so we could properly do the training that we needed to do, which required some semblance of a firm surface and not getting rained on. He took us to meet Father David. Father David, after he had spoken with us about the lesson, Sonny said, "Hey, where should we?" And without pausing, Father David, remember, details are important to the story. Father David, without pausing, said, "You're going to go here. Little park there in Tyler. It's got an amphitheater with a canopy. No one will be there on a Sunday. You go there." He didn't punch up his phone. He didn't look. There were 4 other places that had the exact same thing, but he said, "You go to this one." "Yes, sir, Father. Thank you for the service. Thank you for sharing the wisdom." And Sonny, you're right, man. Right when it, wisdom, man, boom, hit hard. I tell you the truth, brother. I don't think I'm ready for Orthodox, man. I'll tell you the truth on that. Powerful. We went to the park. Everybody parks their cars. We're getting out. Got our bags, training blades, everything. We get up to the flat concrete surface of the amphitheater. And we're getting loosened up, stretched out, moving around a little bit. And there's a guy, pathetic, broken looking guy, sitting at a picnic table in the far corner of that stage there at the amphitheater. Now, clearly intoxicated, I should point out. I mean, clearly intoxicated. And he didn't look from the empties that I saw around him. He looked way more blasted than he should have been for that amount of alcohol. So my arrogant ass immediately went to the default setting of fuck this guy. But he hung out. He didn't interrupt. Not at first. We got to moving around. I saw Bill Wade, who, by the way, I met for the first time that week in real life. Been a supporter for a long time. Bill met and exceeded expectations. He's a fine human being. Bill, like myself, is also what you would call high mileage. Been there, seen some shit. I see Bill talking, and I'm still up in my own ego. Fuck this maggot. And he may have been, for all anybody knew. Bill saw something in him. Bill had more courage than I did. Bill had more strength of conviction than I did. Bill went up and talked to him. I see him put his hand on his shoulder, and I see him talking, and they're very, very close. I don't understand what they're talking about. Break it off. We get back into the exercise, and we are moving around. If you've ever seen Sonny move with a blade, it's poetry. If you've ever had Sonny take the tip of his toe and put you on your ass on a concrete amphitheater floor, not so poetic. But we moved around. And the broken man interrupts. Where are you guys coming from? We're coming from church. Oh, you guys are at church. Spare the long, drawn out portion of this because there's no way I could possibly do justice to the moment. We come to a break in the action, and he says, "You guys are at church. I want you to explain to me how a loving God lets this happen." Turns out this broken man was an ex-Marine. Turns out this broken man had just gotten word that one of his parents had stage 4 cancer. That, on top of PTSD and everything else that was going on in this man's life, had brought him to this quiet place. You see, I was taking it as he was interrupting us. No, man, no, we were interrupting him. We were interrupting him. He was there first. But he asked. He was seeking answers. He didn't immediately piss on, you guys are in church, man. Fuck God, fuck Jesus, fuck all that shit because all this bad. No, man, he was asking, pleading. This broken man pleading. Like he was waiting for God to send him a signal. And we showed up. Father David had sent us there to this one specific place, almost dismissively, like preordained. This broken man. He watched a little bit longer. We talked a little bit more. I won't give you everything that was discussed. That is for the people who were there. And I hope that you will take me at my word when I describe to you the power of this moment and the fact that we were even there. And he gets up and he says, whatever y'all have, if it's church, if it's faith, whatever y'all have, don't ever lose it. He got down on his knees and he said, you know, I didn't come here to drink. I came here to die. And I just caught myself saying, man, who the fuck is this guy? And that voice that had been up in my head leans into my ear and says, who are you, motherfucker? I bounced that one off of Sarah Weaver. You guys know who Sarah is. She is my friend, devout person of faith. And she said, you know, Bart, I'm not so sure that God would use the word motherfucker. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, fair enough. But would God talk to a native Brit in French? Nah. He'd use a language that the Englishman could understand, that the Englishman would be willing and receptive to hear and communicate with. So I got, can you hear me now, motherfucker? This man dropped to his knees. He was inordinately fucked up for the amount of alcohol consumption I'd seen because he had also imbibed a full bottle of Tylenol, miscellaneous sundered painkillers, and antifreeze. And failing that, he had a handgun in the bag. He had literally come there to die. And again, when the ego welled up, it was like, hey, man, who hadn't been there? Oh, you know what? A lot of people hadn't been there. That voice in my head was like, a lot of people haven't been there, but you have. Who'd you reach out to? I didn't reach out to anyone. I alienated everybody. Yeah, this guy's here and he's seeking and he's reaching out, and here you are. Oh, what, Bart? What, Bart? You thought it was you? Got you through all that shit? Oh, what, you thought that was you? That just magicked yourself back from a fucking overdose? Thought that was you that carried your ass through all those fucking dark moments? I'm not going to get into that 2 sets of footprints on a beach bullshit. I'm not going to play with the cliches. I'm just telling you how it spoke to me. And it spoke to me hard. And it said, can you hear me now, motherfucker? This was you. You didn't even seek. He comes seeking. Hey, Thomas. Thomas. There it is, man. Got to put your finger in there. Okay. You gotta run your hand up in my side before you believe, Thomas. Okay. But blessed is he who has not seen and yet believes. I don't have the answers, and I'm not doing it justice. And I know that a lot of you out there think that I sound like a fucking raving lunatic right now. But you know what? If that would have happened to me independent of everything else, if that moment would have just happened as the course of another day, there was a message there and I totally would have missed it. If I had not been humbled by 4 days previous grueling effort and energy expenditure, if I had not been brought low physically, if I had not been brought low mentally and therefore spiritually, because if you think there is not a spiritual element to violence, you are sadly mistaken. I've been reminded for 4 straight days of how low that I was in the food chain and how little I really knew in the grand scheme of things. The voice picked right then to say, hey, can you hear me now, motherfucker? Okay, Thomas, you need to put your hand in here. You need to put your finger in here. You need to put your hand in here before you believe. All right, I'll hand this to you. Been here before. Been here before, you arrogant son of a bitch. I've been here before with one of my own damn disciples. Who are you? Who are you? And he addressed Sonny and he walked up. And Sonny put his arms around the man. The man's mother had already called to get some help, poison control, whatnot. He said, whatever y'all got, don't lose it. I came here to die, and I don't want to die anymore. If he had come there to die and he wasn't seeking, he would have died in it. You understand? If he would have looked at us and went, yeah, man, just a bunch of guys beating each other up, moving around with blades and shit, tough guys, want to be, I ain't impressed. He would have sat there in silence and he would have drifted off. He would have drifted off and died right there on the spot, or waited until we left, put a bullet through the roof of his mouth. This dude was in, man. When I'm telling you he was in, this dude was wrecked. And like I said, for the amount of alcohol that was laying around, I was like, how can this guy possibly be this fucked up? Antifreeze, a full bottle of Tylenol, who knows how many painkillers. He fell apart, man. He fell apart right there. And he reached out to Sonny. Sonny put his arms around him, and he said something to this man, to this broken man. And again, what he said to the broken man, that is for Sonny and the broken man and God. Remember the father that sent us there to the park? You know what the broken man's name was? You know what the broken man's name was? David. And then with that voice again, you were there, you arrogant son of a bitch. You were there. Can you hear me now, motherfucker? And it's real easy for an outsider to look at that and say, hey, man, coincidence, probabilities, reading too much into it, too many variables, yada, yada. All these things are perfectly, perfectly rational, perfectly reasonable observations. I'm not going to try to talk you off of it. I'm not going to try to convince you that I'm not a raving idiot. But in light of the dishonesty, in light of the fact that these things had been reaching out to me, that this voice had been calling me home, had been calling me back to the scriptures for better than a year, man, in very profound ways, I'm relating one incident to you, a peak incident, but just one incident nonetheless, that I experienced where I could feel something speaking to me and I didn't say a word to anyone. And I pride myself on courage and truth. Fuck you, you crippled bitch. Courage and truth. And you can't even own up to something speaking to you because it's outside yourself and it's going to make you re examine things and it's going to make you have to change. It's going to make you have to re examine your life and change. Isn't that the same shit? You fat fuck. Isn't that the same shit that you constantly lament about the other side and why they won't look at truth? And you know what, Bart? You're doing a damn sight better than most. You really are. Credit where credit is due, but you're still gutless because you don't have it in you to find the courage to take that last step of truth and check yourself and that stupid, inflated fucking ego of yours. I had to bring you here, Thomas. I had to bring you here with 9 of your warrior brethren, some of whom you had just met. Bill, who I just met. Shin, who I just met. Bone, who I hadn't seen in over a decade. And we were all there and part of this at that moment, in that spot. We had no business being. Everything had transpired to put us in that position. And again, I get it. Bart, you were reading way too much into this. You're in a dangerous place. You need to take a step back. And maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But I, for once, am going to have the courage that I did not have for the last over a year to hear these things speaking to me, to hear these coaxings, to hear that spiritual resonance hitting me on a deep level and dismissing it out of hand because it would force me to re-examine my own shit. You can think what you want. For those of you who were there, Bone, Shin, Bill, you know, because you know some of the details that I'm leaving out intentionally and some of which I just can't do justice to. You know. And you understand the power of that moment. On the Sunday of Thomas Thomas the doubter. You need to see it. You need to put your finger into the wound. You need to put your hand into my side. Okay. You need to see it. We didn't preach to him. We mentioned that we had come from church. He asked questions about how could a benevolent God allow these things to happen, and we gave him concise feedback. I didn't. Bill and Sonny did. I wasn't gonna try to sell him on Odin in that moment. Okay. But that was the pinnacle and that was the peak. And I felt that voice, and I will not, could not, would not deny the enormity of the moment, deny what it took to bring me to a level where I was humble enough to receive a message. I will not deny everything that transpired to bring it to that moment, to look at that. What is courage? I'll be ridiculed, don't care. I'll be shunned, don't care. What is courage and what is truth? Courage is enough to let my balls drop and to call it like I really see it. Everybody else is free to make their own determinations, but I felt God speak to me. I felt God speak to me in a moment where I was humble enough to receive it. Me and my ego, me and my self aggrandizing, me and my chest thumping meant precisely shit about fuck. I had to be brought low. I had to be brought low and see someone at a level who had been brought lower than me. But that's the difference. He was seeking. He was open. He had not seen and yet believed. Here I was seeing it. Here I was with my hand in the wound, still trying to shrug it off. He had not seen and yet believed. I could not deny the power of that moment. And it's deeply personal for me, for Bone, Shen, Bill, everybody who was there. And of course for David, God bless him. I hope he made it. And even with my skill with words and with communication articulation, I cannot do justice to the power of that moment. Except to say that if you know me, you know how powerful it had to be to move me to this deeper level and to bring me to a point of humility, acceptance, and courage enough to say that I'm coming home to the faith, that I'm coming home to the faith, that I'm taking up the cross, and that I will own that without shame, without justification or equivocation. Been a long time coming. I fought it for a long time. If I would have listened, I would have heard the message a lot earlier, but I wasn't ready to accept it. I have a gift, okay? Not to puff my own pecker here, but I have a gift. I have a gift, as we said before, of communication, articulation. I am a wordsmith. I consider myself a seeker of truth. And now I have to be that no matter where it leads, even if it leads me to places where I'm going to have to re examine a lot of shit. Thought to myself, man, who else has been that low? You've been that low, boy. You've been that low. And that voice in my head, oh, what, you thought it was you? You thought it was you that brought you back from the brink? Oh, you thought that was you? Your works, okay, noble. That wasn't you that carried. That was something outside yourself, and for all your bluster, you couldn't even look at it and have the balls to say that that's what it was. I want to be abundantly clear what this is and what this isn't. This is a matter of personal faith and personal conviction. All right. Does does this mean that I'm going to become that pious asshole that every other jailhouse confession turns into? No. You're the last person in the world to do that because I ain't earned it, son. Ain't no man walking the planet got that kind of stroke. Oh, it's the old Bill Hicks routine. Well, I think what God meant to say, I have never been that confident. I just know that he spoke to me. Does it mean I'm going to throw out all my Black Sabbath albums? No. Does it mean I'm going to stop listening to doom metal on leg day? No. That I'm going to change up all the decor in my house. There will be no Giger posters. It will be nothing but pious examples of, Christian regalia. No, no. Oh, God, Shauna. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you. Your timing, as always, is impeccable. Ah, mm. Just when I thought I was going to get through this whole thing without getting choked up. This is something, and I see the predictable hiccups with the Wi-Fi signal. I knew that was coming. It was only a matter of time. This is a personal decision that I'm making. I am choosing to walk in the light. Is this inconsistent or incongruent with anything that has gone before? Is it? Is it? Am I going to suddenly deny any of the wisdom or the strength that I got from 30 years of walking the Asatru path? That I'm going to suddenly say that the nine noble virtues don't apply to anything, certainly can't bring any strength to anyone? No. That I'm going to reject that symbolism because it removes me from Christ? No, no. Part of the strength that it took me to get here, I got from there. Does it mean that I'm suddenly going to be more judgmental of everyone? Far from it. Far from it. I got to tell you, man, this week, and I know it's what they call premature enlightenment, right? I know it's what they call premature enlightenment, but I felt lighter, man. I felt so much lighter, so much more able to let shit go. Again, feel about that how you want to feel. I'm not going to be that guy pulling you off to the side. Hey, man, can I take a minute to talk to you about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? I'm not that guy, man. I'm not. At least I know. I doubt very seriously I will ever be a clergyman. I share Megan's sentiment that I believe Sonny will be. I have to agree with that sentiment now, if for no other reason than it was Sonny's presence in my life that brought me to this moment. That it was seeing the strength that he got from his beliefs. And that's another thing that we talked about. Let's ponder that. Let's ponder the enormity of this for a minute. We were practicing murder arts and walked the guy back from the brink of suicide. You're going to tell me God doesn't have a plan? You're going to tell me that there's not something at work there that's beyond anybody's comprehension? I couldn't get away from that either. We were practicing murder arts and backed the guy down from a suicide without uttering a word until he reached out. Why were we even there on the Sunday of Thomas? Oh, believe me, Jude, believe me. Yes, he's definitely got a sense of humor. The strength that Sonny has, and we were discussing some other things. It's like, yes, we know each other, we have a bond, we have an intimacy, but I will not know the full width and breadth of his darkness, nor he know mine. He brought that up. Bart will never know this part of my darkness because he was not in Chechnya when this thing happened. I will never know that part of his darkness because I've never put a needle in my arm and dropped dead in my living room floor. We all got a darkness. Sonny and I have managed to find one light. And even that one light we see differently. I may not be up orthodox, especially not out of the starting gate, son. If you stuck me in one of those Baptist church right now, I'd yeah, I got you. I got you. Might not be the best connection, but I'm gonna hang on to it because I'm not done. I'm not done. I've got testimony to give on this. I hope this is coming through. If not, I'll download it direct. I'm not going to become more judgmental unless I become more judgmental of myself. I'm not going to hold somebody else to a standard that I'm not living up to myself. Do you think this is suddenly going to turn into some complete live and let live? As if I'm not going to look at the injustices that have always bothered me to the core. I still treat them as the injustices that they are. No. What about the forgiveness of Christ? Okay, God is not mocked. First of all, getting back to the scripture, God is not mocked. Wisdom. Uh, wisdom. Yeah. Okay, Sonny. In keeping with that, that also means that you're on your way to priesthood. So revel in that. Um, I am trying to bring myself closer to truth. I have a gift of being able to communicate. I have a gift of being able to convey that. But the example that I've been leading with has not been up to a standard to which I should have been holding myself, if that makes any sense. Even if it doesn't. I am taking up the cross. I am seeking truth, no matter where that takes me. I'm probably going to become an even bigger mess of contradictions than I already am from time to time, but this is part of the early stages of the faith. I find strength in it. I am not ignorant of history. I am not ignorant of the atrocities that have been carried out in God's name. Going to be somebody out there that's going to bring up the Crusades. Okay, well, first of all, the Crusades were a defensive reaction to Muslim aggression. And second of all, I didn't realize we were having this conversation in the fucking 1400s. You are not going to see me become pious. You are not going to see me become more judgmental than I have ever been because I hold myself to a higher standard and things will be held to a higher standard. But I will look at evil and call it evil. I will get further using this gift to bring people to the truth, to bring people to Christ than I will ever get in any sort of aggrandizement. This gift is wasted if I do not use it to bring people to the truth. And in my own way, I've been making that effort my whole life, really, but particularly the last 3 years that I've shared with y'all. I will use this gift to continue to bring people to the truth. If it brings people to Christ, and that is how they find the truth through Christ, through the crucifixion, through the resurrection, then I have been a worthy vessel. I cannot explain it, not in any way that does it justice. I need no one's validation, nor even their acceptance. I can tell you right now with a reasonable degree of certainty who will truly support me in this, who will absolutely reject me for it, looking for a reason to judge, who will be lukewarm about it and secretly say, yeah, he's drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't care. None of it matters. I know who will and who won't. Not gonna get all not gonna get all Christ about it, but I know who will deny. I know who will deny 3 times before the cock crows. And believe me, I know which ones to sell me for 30 pieces of silver. I am not equating myself to Christ, not even close. But you understand the metaphor, you understand the analogy, you understand what I was trying to get across. Right, right, Sonny. And again, and I'm Sonny, I'm glad you brought that up because after that happened and we all parted ways at the end of the class, I had a complete breakdown in the front seat of that damn rental Subaru. I called my wife. I tried to explain to her the power of what had happened. I failed, probably much as I'm failing here. Not for lack of effort. Again, like here, I got out, needed to step out, grab a smoke. Sonny was still there. He'd been parked behind me the whole time, talking to Megan. By the way, Megan, you were right. He told me. He told me. Megan said Bart is going to have a moment. He's going to have enlightenment from this before I was even in town because of a post I had made a week before. But I mean, I broke, and you guys know the love and respect that I have for that man. And in 2011, you're right, man. I couldn't have known. I couldn't have known. I was a tactical fanboy, getting to train with the man in a class of 14 cops, only fucking civilian. And as far as Sonny knew, I was just I was this musclehead nut job. I never forget the moment. I used to a real short story. We get back to it, but we did a drill, and it was a catastrophic malfunction drill. And the last thing we were supposed to do was, top cover off, rack, click, drop the weapon, go to sidearm, double tap. And it got to that point, and all these cops are out there with their, $2,000 Arsenal SLRs. I'm there with my $400 beater Wasser, and all the rest of them kind of laid their stuff down real delicately on the deck. I took mine, you know, threw it in front, and he shrugs his shoulders after he hit ceasefire. I was like, he was closing on me, sir. I had to put something between us. And Sonny turned in that inimitable accent of his, and he was like, I have decided that I like this man. He is crazy, but I have decided that I like this man. He didn't know, and I didn't know what to make of him, but there was a reason. There was a reason that we were there. And you're right. You're right, Sonny. He saw the reason for us meeting then. Who would have known that it would have evolved the way that it has? That you and I would become friends. That friendship would deepen. That I would stand next to you the day of your wedding. And that you would be instrumental in bringing me home to the faith. Who the hell could have seen that? It took a broken Marine and a mad Russian to bring me back home to Christ. And you're gonna tell me there's no grand design to that there's no strength to that. There's certainly no rhyme or reason to it. If there is a method to his madness, it is because there is certainly a madness to his method. Quotable Bart, Volume 1. To those who will support me in this decision that I've made, I give you thanks from the bottom of my heart. For those who still don't know what to make of this, stick around. It'll sort itself out or it won't. Either way, you stick with me. I love you. You bail. I understand. I forgive you. Again, I'm not going to get pious and I'm not going to get judgmental. Not about any of this. I'm too early in. But I will say this, it feels good to be back in the faith, to be back in the church, to be back in the scriptures. How does that jive? How does that jive with my persona, my lifestyle? Washed in the blood? You don't think that would resonate with me? Excuse me? I still believe that there are dark times coming. And you know what, Sonny? I thought about this. And Sonny, I'd love your feedback on this one. If not here, private message, whatever. But you remember the talk that we had when I was on my way back up to Washington, and I stopped. You just finished at the farmers market, and we had a cup of coffee there. And I told you about that, about my reluctant optimism, that I still hold on to that hope, that I never felt more hopeful, right? Maybe it wasn't for any of the reasons that I listed. Maybe it wasn't because I felt like we were going to sweep the midterms, that they couldn't pull it off twice, that the media had lost its credibility, and we were going to. Maybe it wasn't because of that. Maybe it came down to this. What I see around me would drive me insane if I did not know that no matter what happens, God will have the last word. Maybe that's really what drives that hope. I couldn't put words to it. Maybe it was speaking to me then. I know it was speaking to me then. I know it was speaking to me then. I know it was. I've lived in denial for so fucking long, man. Mr. Courage, Mr. Truth, I have lived in denial for so fucking long. I have never deliberately misled any of you, but I lied to myself. I was not honest as I should have been. I did not have the courage to be honest and admit what was speaking to me and what I was feeling and be able to pursue that no matter where it led. I was not honest. And for that, I apologize. But as far as confessions go, I do feel lighter. I do feel lighter putting it out there in the open. I was not honest with my friends. I was not honest with friends that I knew I could have been honest with. Ryan, I know I could have said something to Ryan. Ryan, I'm going to tell you something. Ryan has kept me honest through this whole thing. He has forced me to, he is the one that's kept me in check to say, hey, have you examined this? Have you thought about that? Not that he's trying to talk me out of anything. He's not. But he's forcing me to really, really look deep inside. If anything, that is strengthening the conviction because he's doing what I do with every other facet of my ideology. Test that shit in the crucible, and if it is found wanting, it is gone. I'm finding strength in that. I could have been honest with Ryan a year ago when it was really, really ringing in my head. I could have been honest with him. I just said, look, man, this Jesus thing, could have been honest with Sonny. Kept thumping my chest. And I was devout in my walk with the old gods. I was devout in my walk with the old gods for 30 years. I do not disparage that. I do not reject it. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. It gave me a lot. It forced me to develop and grow a lot. There is a lot of truth and wisdom to the Havamal, to the Eddas, the Lopsa. But this is home. Analogy. I spent 26 years in Texas. More than 20 of those years, I was wanting to be in the Northwest. I am in the Northwest now. I love Texas. Texas shaped who I am in a very profound way. But the Northwest is home. Doesn't mean I reject Texas. It just means that now I'm coming home. That's it. I have been, Sonny. I have been. Nonstop. So there it is. That is my testimony. I am taking up the cross. I'm putting on the armor of God, and I am steeling myself for the fight. Because I was not exaggerating. This has not been hyperbolic in any way. There is a war on for the soul of the West. You guys know how I feel about Western civilization, my blood, and my people. You know. Nothing's changed about that. Christendom, it was the church that held the West together. Do you understand me? For good or for ill, it was the church that held the West together and brought us to the point where we are. Feel me? I could have been honest with Ryan. I could have been honest with Sonny, certainly. I did not. But I've given my testimony. I feel that burden lifted, and it feels good. It feels like home. I don't need anyone's approval or validation. It feels like home. I'm taking up the cross and I'm steeling myself up for battle and I'm putting on the armor of God because there are some dark times coming, boys and girls. I needed to know what use God could have from my gift. If it's bringing people to the truth, if it's bringing people to the word, if it's bringing people home. And let me be that vessel. Let me be that vessel. I don't pretend to understand. I couldn't possibly fathom the depth and enormity of those designs. I couldn't. Not on my best day. So how about I just admit that I know shit about fuck, that I humble myself before God, that I take up the cross and I walk in the light. How about that? You thought about what happens if you're wrong, Bart? Yeah, I thought about it. Thought about it. It's worse that happens. 3 years from now, I look like an idiot because I had the balls to follow the truth where it took me and I happen to be wrong. Hmm? What am I afraid of? Oh, it's going to put me on a government watch list. What? There's one that I'm not already on. It's going to push people away. I don't need them. Never have. The last 3 years have done a fine job of cleaning house. People that had outlived their usefulness to me. This will be the final polish. I don't need it. I will live how I'm going to live. I will understand the truth as best I can. Again, Roman, I, yes, sit. That is it. That is it. Only list that matters is called the cross. I don't worry about anything that I have to lose. And it's not even a concern about what I have to gain. It is about following the truth where the truth leads me. This is where the truth has led me. The truth is leading me home. I will follow that path. If it has all been in error and it has all been in folly, Lord knows I have wasted more for less. At least one of you out there is thinking Pascal's wager. You know, the one guy that actually read Blaise Pascal. Not two. There's at least three of you that read Pascal. And you know what? That's a valid observation. Perfectly valid observation. This isn't about that. If I was going to gamble that, I'd have gambled it on a deathbed confession, or I would have come to the cross a hell of a lot sooner than this. I cannot rationally explain any of this. I cannot fully articulate the power of what brought me here, and I don't need to. I feel it here, in my heart, my soul, out of my core. I feel it. That's it. I am taking up the cross. I am confessing Christ, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. I'm going to leave that one up because you're right. You're absolutely right. You were one of the three, by the way, that had read Blaise Pascal, for the record. I confess Christ, crucifixion, resurrection. And because it was this resonance that brought me back, I'm going to drop it again. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. The third day he rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, from whence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Christian Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. I am the Reverend, and that is the gospel. That was a lot. That was a lot. Thank you all for being here. I don't know where it goes from here, man. I don't know where it goes from here. I'm rolling with it. I'm rolling with it. I already feel like it's leading me to better places. How this plays out in the long run, we will see. But I appreciate y'all being here. My testimony, I appreciate you letting me share this with all of you. And I will appreciate your understanding, your support going forward. I'll pass around that plate, yada, yada, blah, 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 whatever. You know the drill. Here's what you can do for me, guys. I'm going to, let's kick this up a little bit. Here we go. I'm going to put up the outro music here. What you can do, man. First of all, if you're a person of faith, you go ahead and walk your own path. Do what you can to bring people to the truth. Bring people to the truth through Christ. Bring people to Christ through the truth. However you got to get them there. Maybe one or the other. Do your part. What you can do for me, personally, you got a social media presence, whatever. Let them know. You got a fat, toothless, crippled buddy. Crane operator with some opinions. Gets on the rants and raves for an hour or two every Sunday. Let them know that I'm a like-minded, kindred spirit. Maybe we got something we can share with each other. Bring both of us into some greater strength. And in the meantime, what you can do for me, primarily what you can do for yourself. Brother Mike Stone lays it out. Live the three, man. Live the three. Right now, the signal to noise ratio has never been more fucked up. You have got to be able to be that signal that breaks through the noise. They will try to bury you in the darkness. And it works even on the best of us. They will try to bury you in the darkness. They will try to demoralize. They will try to emasculate. They will try to destroy you, smother you in that darkness. You have got to be the one to carry that light through the darkness. Most of all, above everything else, the iron rule. You have got to be that strength in a world full of weakness. Strength and courage means a whole lot of different things. You have to have the strength to follow that truth no matter where it leads you, and to realize how weak you can be before you can find that inner strength and confess that it's not just you that's carrying you through, but you got to be that strength. Without that strength here, you will not be able to be the signal that breaks through the noise of the light to be carried through the darkness. You die out like so many things before you. Be strong. Be strong in Christ. Be strong in yourself. Own it. Deus vult, motherfuckers. God wills it. live up to the challenge. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Love you guys, man. It's a tough one for me. Thank you for being here. I love y'all. See you next Sunday. Thank you. God bless. Peace. Hope I did it justice.